So if I can have everyone take a look at the minutes. Hopefully you had a chance to read them in advance. If anybody
I did, but I
has.
didn't catch any typos.
No.
But I read them quickly.
Okay, well, yeah, Jessica is taking our minutes. Would you mind keeping time for us?
Oh, there, yeah, I was looking at that blank bag and seeing
Two
the
pages.
invisible ink.
Yes, getting it down to 2 pages is an art I'm not quite mastered, so thank you, Kelly.
Well, we can always change the
try
font.
really
It
hard.
actually probably would have fit if we just changed the font.
Okay.
Hello.
We are just taking a look at the minutes. We are being recorded.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go left star.
And take a
Hello.
look at
I'm not running for select.
the minute. We're taking a look
Mark?
at the minutes.
Me neither.
Look good in that movie.
No hills to carry me down tonight.
Tough one.
Do you represent the millionaires or the billionaires?
Because that's what it says here, and what is it, what we decided, and
I should have shaved.
Sorry,
I knew it was on TV.
what we're doing.
There was more discussion.
What is that? You shave on Tuesday afternoon? Is that your practice?
There was more discussion.
Yeah, for the select board meeting. Now that I'm retired, I don't need to shave.
That, once we did this, I mean, this is what I.
I do bathe every day though.
You've been called the worker, by the way, folks.
So we know how.
I was surprised to see that you're not a treasurer.
Friday.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Doesn't he know you're a treasurer?
One to two. One to two.
I know. I was probably.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And minutes approved unanimously. So, have Jessica kind of lead our discussion in following up the discussion with Chief Lipson at our last meeting.
Sure. So I haven't prepared any remarks. But as you all know, I noted at the end of last month's meeting that I thought it was worth a follow-up discussion about ICE presence in the court. We can have a little bit of that discussion today, but we don't have to. But Kelly and I also thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of debrief from the meeting and see whether there are any things that perhaps we want to explore more and how we want to do that. Because a lot of really meaty topics, I think, came up, not only the Century City. So we can, I've kind of made a list for myself, the topics that were discussed. We can go through them one by one, and then if people have comments on those, or discussion around those, or does that sound okay? All right. So just in order of how they came up, the first thing we talked about was the Sanctuary City policy, and we were provided with some information and statistics about how that's being implemented and how that has played out. Were there any comments or thoughts around that part of the presentation or conversation?
Any questions, concerns, people want more information on that? Or are we good?
I mean, I think it seemed like we had fairly well prepared on that and had some good explanations as to what transpired and why it did transpire. It seemed to be reasonable in my mind as far as that goes.
Yeah, I thought so too. I didn't expect to get the level of detail on the 5 cases that he provided, so I was glad to see that that was clearly something that they were aware of and tracking. So I was impressed by that. The reason that I brought it up as a point for future discussion is just because I know that when we drafted the Century City policy, and many folks around the city were involved in that effort, you know, part of the motivation around that was to make sure that the police continued to be an accessible resource for everyone in the community. And partially because of my work, I know that victims are less likely to cooperate in a criminal case in any way if they're undocumented or if they're not U.S. citizens and if they have reason to believe that immigration is going to be at the court. So to hear that in all 5 instances in which immigration expressed an interest in an individual that had been arrested by the Brookline police, they then showed up really quickly in court the next morning, that kind of gave me some pause in terms of what that means for victims and witnesses and how comfortable they will feel going to court. So that was, I guess, part of the conversation that I was interested in having. There might not be anything to do, but I think it's worth for people to think about how that plays out on the other end of things.
Yeah, it'd be helpful if Michael was here to understand.
Yeah.
Whether their presence is very obvious when they're there, are they?
The ice.
Does anyone know?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I know that in many courts, they show up in plain clothes
Yeah.
and wait for a case to be called, and then they approach the individual. I haven't.
He sort of said there was no way to prevent that from happening.
Right,
Right.
so they're short of legislation. I mean, I know that some, I'm gonna say, no, it wasn't Worcester. I'm getting my cities mixed up.
Newton had an issue
Newton.
where the judge and actually the DA
Oh, yeah, that was different.
So that was different?
Well, that they're kind of being accused of conspiring to avoid.
Right, but the ICE agent was out in the audience, they saw him,
Mhm.
and then they began the process of letting the guy go out the back door.
Yeah, so that's not what I'm suggesting. I know that, like, when I raised it as an issue, I got the immediate pushback of like, well, you know, we
They
can't
want
obstruct
that
justice,
case.
and, you know,
Yeah.
like, I'm not, that's
Well,
not.
the issue there was whether ICE should be hovering around local courts.
Right, and I
Or-
think, I think, you know, as things stand, they have a right to be, it's a public place, they have a right to be there, right? There are some cities that have passed policies similar to like our policy that also include specific information for like court personnel should not facilitate, you know, these kinds of things, et cetera, et cetera. New York has done it, you know, so there's definitely examples with policies around ICE presence in the court that isn't, you know, ICE can't come to the court, but that kind of creates some protections, and that may or may not make sense. I mean, 5 people and, you know, a whole
He
year
should
and a
have
half or whatever.
outstanding warrants too, right? Felony type
I
warrants.
can't remember. Yeah,
If
so I'm
I'm
not,
mistaken.
right.
And that's, yeah, and under, so it wasn't, oh, the person was just arrested here in Brookline and then maybe they're undocumented, maybe they aren't, we don't know, they show up in court and then ICE grabs them. It wasn't like that, right?
Right.
That, yeah, there was very, very specific warrants that were out for these people, and some of them was pretty nasty stuff too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, so I'm, you know, personal feelings aside, it's more about the environment that it creates. For me, it's more about the environment that it creates in the court for people other than defendants.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm talking about.
I see.
You know, like some of these people inevitably are going to end up in the hands of ICE, and we might have different opinions about whether that makes sense or not. And there are certainly cases, I would argue, where the defendants probably aren't the people that we would want to end up in that situation. Oh, well, there you go. But yeah, my thinking was more around the broader court environment and what that means for people like my clients, who I know decide to drop a restraining order or not to go to the arraignment
Stay away.
and stay away.
So is there anything that can be done about that?
Well, I mean, the question is, something should be done. I had brought some, I only brought one copy of everything because I was printing from work. But, you know, the ACLU has put out a report called Freezing Out Justice, How Immigration Arrests at Courthouse Are Undermining the Justice System. Northeastern did a report in March of last year called Blocking the Courthouse Doors, ICE Enforcement and Massachusetts Courthouses and its effects on the judicial process. So there's opportunities to educate ourselves on that and then decide whether it's something we want to think more about or not. I was just putting it out there.
Can you email those to us?
Yes, I can.
Michael, we were just kind of doing a debrief on the chief's, the discussion with the chief at our last meeting. So we're just kind of taking it topic by topic that we discussed. So the first one that we were talking about was the sanctuary city policy and how that's being implemented. We've already said that we were impressed with the amount of information that we received from the chief and the openness on that. But we were just, I guess, talking about whether, you know, the presence of ICE in the courtrooms, and I don't know if you can shed any light on that for us as to, I don't know what we're looking for, how often they are there, whether it's obvious
Whether
that
they're
ICE
marked.
is present, are they in uniform, and
So normally, if they would only be there if there is somebody who's been arrested who has although it's changed over the last year, it used to be just a violent offender, but now it's, they have increased their presence with people who have been arrested before. So it doesn't have to be a violent offense. It's usually for processing purposes. In the past, it was just when we arrested somebody who was in a legal area, we would.
I'm trying to hear you.
When we arrested someone who was in the country illegally, it would pop up if they had been thrown out of the country before, and they would just tell us to send them the paperwork, because they can't process it. It's just overwhelming for them.
So ICE doesn't show up for minor?
No, they never have. No, they still don't.
Even today?
No.
Yeah.
It has to be somebody who, they have to be probably brought back in from come in illegally.
And is the task force on sanctuary cities disbanded?
Yes.
So that could be put together again if you were to explore.
Well, the question is, do folks think that there's more work to be done around this?
Well, you're the expert on that.
I mean,
well, that's what we're kind of talking about as to what the situation.
I have pretty strong
Yes.
views on it, but, you know, as a whole, or, you know, as a working group.
I mean, what can we as a town do? You know, what sort of,
Well, I guess
Power
the nature of it, Michael, is it,
yeah.
If you
can
had
you
your
give us an idea?
druthers, what would
Sorry,
you do?
can you give us an idea of what happens when ICE is there? Again, are they in uniform? Is it obvious that they're
That's
there?
one question. I mean, the terms, I mean, the courts are not our courts, I mean, it's Norfolk County, so it's limited.
Authority.
Yeah, authority.
It's the state trial court. It's just part of Norfolk County, but it's part of the state trial court. So as far as if they show up, there'll be something indicating they're from ICE. It's extremely rare. I don't want people to think that, especially in Brookline, that it's
Yeah.
commonplace. I mean,
They're not hanging out at the court on a daily
Oh, no.
basis.
No, but there were five.
They're not hanging out at any court on a daily basis. What they do is they'll get notified that someone's coming in that's been arrested, usually through the AFIS, the automated fingerprint identification system that they have processed before, or agencies will indicate, they indicate through AFIS that they're in the country illegally, and then they will show up. If it's somebody who's committed a legitimate, if it's a driving offense, it's still just send us the paperwork. They don't have to.
What does that mean, send us the paperwork?
Well, they're in there illegally, and they're required that we send them paperwork to assist them, which is a federal law.
Which paperwork?
Whatever arrest that was made for.
Oh, okay.
So it's a federal law. It's actually a felony to not assist them.
Right.
So what we do is sign the paperwork of who we arrested. This has been going on forever, I mean, as long as I've been 30 years. The number of people that, I know we did have an ICE, someone who was detained on an ICE warrant, and that was for, I think, attempted murder for beating a wife. That was recent, that was probably, that was before the last thing.
I think you mentioned
Yeah,
that.
yeah, on the list.
Yeah. And he was in the country, he'd come back.
Mhm. So does, in the courtroom, would ICE
Yes, they would be in the courtroom. As soon as
handcuff?
they're released,
But
yes.
As soon as they're released,
Yeah.
then ICE arrests them
Yes,
right there?
yes, or the court would release the guys too. This isn't an adversarial relationship, this is someone
No,
who's
just trying to
under
understand.
arrest for a serious offense, and they're transferring custody to another justice
Company.
organization, or just a federal. Again, it's extremely rare. This individual a couple of weeks ago was a very, very serious, very seriously injured. But I think that's the last one we went on in a very long time. Like all the motor vehicle stuff, it doesn't even.
This is useful information compared to the wall that we're reading about all the time. This is not a matter of blocking. People are identified and handled correctly by the judicial system when they are criminals. When they've been arrested or for something serious. So, I mean, I think it would be nice to read in the papers that we do take care of this matter. We don't need a wall.
So I would say I don't think that our systems can catch up with the problem, because it's kind of like guns. There's so many people, and give a perfect example is last winter we arrested 2 Chinese nationals who had flown in from Hong Kong, who had landed in New York City, who landed with like 150 fake credit cards that were produced, and then they drove up from New York City, hitting a bunch of banks. And they were lucky enough that there was a security person working in IT who was watching all these banks get hit by the same series of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really understand it. It's high-tech crime. And when they got to Brookline, they hit the bank again using the same Cyrus, I think it is, or whatever it's called, that network.
Yeah.
Cirrus, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that the individual called and said, these people are taking, so we went in and arrested them. They had been off the plane for less than 24 hours. They were released and they were never seen from again. So that's just the reality of our system. It's just,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, to that, I would also add that there are some courthouses where ICE presence is much more common than it is in Brookline. So it's not, the same picture necessarily in other places, and people are getting arrested even if they're just there on arraignment for driving without a license. That is happening.
okay.
So it might not be happening here, and I'm very happy to
But
hear
they're,
that.
but they're in the country illegally, so they're legally arrested by a federal.
They're either undocumented or they're documented, but their crime subjects them to potential deportation.
So they're legally being arrested, so which is not something that we would be, it's not like it's an illegal arrest or
Right.
Right.
No. It's not a criminal arrest. It's a civil detention.
No, the civil detention is the filing. They arrested for criminal, basically it's criminal trespass.
Oh,
So they're arrested, it's illegal, to come into the country illegally. If
right,
you
but
do it second
no, but
time, it's a
ICE is
felony.
not arresting people to then charge them with the crime of illegal reentry. That happens sometimes, but generally ICE is civilly detaining them for being in the country illegally, and then not usually charging them with a crime, just placing them in deportation proceedings. So it's considered a detention. It looks like an arrest. They're handcuffed and then they're put in jail, right? But it's a civil detention.
I guess we're talking semantics, you're talking the processes, but the reality is it's a crime, federal crime, to enter the country illegally.
Yeah,
It's a federal crime.
Yes, it's a federal crime to enter the country illegally. When ICE puts a detainer on someone and picks them up at the court, it is not a criminal arrest for illegal
It
reentry.
depends, if it's a warrant, it
Well,
is.
I don't think we need to.
Yeah,
discuss.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
we don't
Right. I mean, the purpose
We don't
of
really recognize.
the policy was to avoid these types of, oh, someone's gonna get notified. If there's an ICE detainer that occurs because somebody was arrested for driving without a license with no other offense, even though they're in the country illegally,
Right.
that Brookline, we are not going to detain that person on
Right.
behalf of ICE.
That's correct.
Right, that's, I think, what
Yeah.
Jessica is referring to, and differentiating that to someone who has a felony warrant or has done something to the extent that is much more severe than driving without a license.
Right, the difference is, a detainer is just a request, basically, to hold the person, while a warrant is an order by the court to hold the person.
Right.
So that's the difference.
Right, and I don't think anyone is questioning
No,
warrants,
they're all aware.
right?
Yeah. Okay, so I will circulate the resources that I have about ICE presence in courthouses, and if anybody is interested in doing some more thinking about that, I'm happy to do that. The next thing that came up, and I know that we have limited time, is the use of body cameras, which I thought was really interesting and clearly something that the police department is thinking very deeply about. Were there thoughts, questions, or follow-up on that?
Yeah, I really wanted to hear more of a schedule of how that is going to proceed. And, you know, it seems clear that there are questions and issues that have to be worked out, but I really want to have more of a sense of what's the due date for working them out. And when can we expect, you know, that to happen? Because it could drag on and on and on. And I'd like to get more of what his timetable is for making that happen.
Let me add, the committee has been formed to deal with surveillance, to include body cameras, and military style equipment in Brookline. It's just a very slow process, just getting off the ground, but also it's going to be there's a slow process to actually go through the evaluation of issues like body cameras, because it's not as simple and straightforward as having a body camera. I mean, a lot of issues have to do with everything from the resolution of the pictures on the camera to what do you do with the film
And the data.
and people's privacy rights
Yep,
when
I am
considering
aware of
that.
all of that.
But that is in process. I just actually just recently got comments back from the chief regarding, you know, the charge for that committee, and I anticipate that we'll issue it fairly soon.
How
Issue
is-
what?
A charge to the committee
I see.
to
Has
organize.
Has the committee already been formed?
Not yet.
Yeah. And how will it be formed? Will that be volunteers or
Be
will people
volunteers.
be identified?
Yeah. So, you know, people who are interested should apply to the select board. We'll go from there.
Good night. I was surprised by the figures for storing traffic cameras for 30 days, which I sort of remember was a compromise with civil rights activists that didn't want for being stored forever.
I can't hear you.
Traffic cameras footage is stored for only 30 days, which I remember as a compromise when they were authorized. And body camera used to be stored for 6 months. I think it's backwards. You know, if something happens involving a policeman who somebody thinks is behaving badly, they're going to go after us right away. And we only 6 months, whereas I think we do need 6 months for traffic cameras.
That's the law. It's the law, that's a public
Is it?
record.
For 30 days.
No, it'll be actually, to be honest with you, it's a minimum of 6 months. It depends if it's a criminal case, it could be forever. So for example, body cameras, they go into a homicide.
Yeah.
That could be forever. You could have to store that forever because it's evidence of crime. So that's the real issue is and then the other issue that I have to mention, and again, this goes back to what select person Green is talking about is We're gonna be going to people's houses with body cameras on, and it may be a domestic. And
Yeah.
people have privacy rights, but people all have some right to that information, and there might be children in there. And so the issue becomes, the law says that we cannot allow the public to know who the children are involved, so how do we take those kids out of that camera footage, you know what I mean? So that's difficult. The only way to do it would be to deny people, but that's, you know, so it's a really evolving process.
Edit it.
Well, but we're not, it's not.
Well,
yeah,
something
it's-
to be resolved.
Right.
We're not gonna solve that issue here.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess my question is, because these are all absolutely legitimate issues that have to be addressed. They've been addressed in lots of other places. So I'm not quite clear on why you're not having this emphasis on slow.
Well, they can address in other areas, but maybe not to our values.
Well, but
Yeah.
why would,
It may be a quick process, but it may be a lot more complicated than we think.
and it may also be a lot less complicated.
Well, that's what I said, maybe a quick
Okay.
process.
So do you have any idea of what the timeline for this might be?
I couldn't venture a guess.
And are we, that task force look at schools as well?
Unfortunately, yes. And, yeah, of course, the warrant article was very broad, and it would include schools, including the monitoring software you use to protect students. So, you know, the concept is that, you know, we would distinguish between surveillance that needs to be monitored and controlled, and surveillance like that maybe, you know, we shouldn't subject to any type of process before it can be used.
Speaking of schools, one of the other things that came up was school safety, and we also addressed mentoring programs and locker room racism. So the remaining 6 minutes, do folks have thoughts or follow-up questions on those topics?
The locker room racism issue, you may want to talk to the fire chief, because that's an issue that comes up even more so among firefighters in terms of women than in force. And I'm not sure that we have really given as much thought to that as we have to sort of locker room behavior in the police department.
Any other overall feedback on whether, you know, how it went, the process, questions, whether we want to do it again?
I guess and it might be to the last point, again, I would like to have more of a sense of what, is there a program or a process going to be put in place to address that issue when and if it occurs again? And I didn't get a sense from him whether there was some way proactively to, you know, that will be dealt with in a sort of systemic or, kind of way.
Which issue?
The locker room racism comments.
I think it was well worthwhile, and I think we should do it on a regular basis, not just kind of an ad hoc basis, but every 6 months or what have you, and then we can answer some of the questions that Joan is raising.
I agree with that, just especially in the sense of there's nothing really definite in what was said. And so I worry that, you know, we'll meet in the next year and there will be nothing definite in what was said. And it'll sound and look good and have good optics, but really no answers or resolutions. There have been challenges. I think Joan's point of, you know, Brookline is great at creating committees. We've been great at that for a long time. But there's no goal. It is truly just another committee. Like if there's no goal to come up with a policy within a year, I'm not saying you necessarily have to meet that, but there has to be something. And so I would worry we'd meet with the chief whenever that would be, and we get, I think, fairly vague responses and no definitive timetables.
So are the things that we discussed, the particular issues we'd like to track? The December meeting was kind of our first, he's new.
Yeah, no, I
And
get
it
that.
was a bit of a.
No, I understand
get to
that,
know.
yeah.
So you're right, in the future, we'd like to have some accountability and some definite answers.
Yes.
Are the issues that we raised the issues that we'd like to track, at least at this point? I know things may change in the future. Right now, or is there anything particularly missing?
I mean, I wasn't satisfied, and I mean, I don't, you know, again, I don't worry so much about locker room talk as much as social media footprints, I guess, for lack of a better term. I mean, the reality is, like, you know, I work for the town too. I can say I have freedom of speech, but that's not really true. There's some comments that I make that make me unworthy of working with children.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, the government can't do it. You have freedom of speech. The government can't censor you.
well, as I
But
teach
your
my children,
employer- Your employer certainly
freedom of
can.
speech is not without consequence. It never has been, and never will be. And so, you know, I know that there's a town policy that's been put in place. I don't know what exactly that means.
Is that a social media account policy for employees?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so,
This is for employees or employees of the school department?
for the town,
The town?
and the school has
Have you
a
seen
little different
specific-
policy.
Have you seen things in social media?
Yeah.
Yes, that you would consider to be racist?
Inappropriate.
Like from the public safety department, from
Yeah.
police officers and firefighters, yeah.
Could you point it out so we can look at it?
You want me to go scour through Facebook and?
I'm not a social media person.
There have been incidents I can think two, that Chief O'Leary addressed, but maybe he's supposed to just get a sense of how they were addressed. And, you know, critique it if it should be addressed differently, if you think it should be addressed differently.
Well, I don't know how they were addressed.
Right.
I just know people tend to get really big muscles when they get behind a laptop or on their phone and say really crazy stuff.
Problem. What would you, if you saw something like that, what would you do? Would you report that to?
I could. I mean, you know, marginalized people, it's not easy to sit up there and just report. I don't necessarily consider myself in that, in the sense of, certainly as a black man I do, but I also realize I have some privilege, the fact that I work here, grew up here, and things like that, where most of these officers I actually know from going to school and stuff, like, you know, which gives me a very different privilege than even when I was 16 and didn't know. So like, you know, I can see that. I don't know what my immediate response is, mostly because I don't know what the response would be from
Right.
any sort of
But if you were
authority.
to see anything like that, it's inappropriate, I'd ask you to let me know. Yeah, I'd certainly be interested in seeing them, I'm happy to ask the questions from my own and never name
Sure.
your name. To try to get answers, if you're aware that they're a town employee. I'm happy to ask about that.
I think that's a good example, though, of why there needs to be some sense that there is proactivity on the part of, you know, different departments or whatever, because it shouldn't be the random citizen that's happens to stumble across something and has to tell somebody else to get it to, I mean, that's not a way to, you know, if there is a policy, then there should be some, you know, some way that there's regular, I don't know, monitoring or checking or.
Do you think that the town should be monitoring the Facebook
I
pages
don't-
or
I
Instagram
don't know,
accounts of all
but if,
town
but if
employees?
there's a policy that says,
I would think, consider that to be a violation of First Amendment rights.
well, I mean,
If they're using town equipment.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what-
I
that's-
mean,
That's a
if
different
it's,
thing.
And then
you know,
we're talking
I
about
think,
people's private.
right, and you wanna be,
How
and
is
you
social
wanna,
Media is not private.
yeah.
Well, I mean, but not their work, you know, if it's.
but if
private
it's
life.
related to
People's
their
private
job.
lives. We're
or-
not talking about it, I don't think we're talking about it being related to people's jobs. I think we're talking about people making racist comments on their Instagram
I see.
accounts,
Okay.
their Facebook pages, and completely in their private lives.
So I thought we were talking about related to their job.
So even in terms of use of town-owned computers, I mean, that's not a dump shop, or a slam dunk for the answer. You know, because the question is, do you want the town to be monitoring keystrokes, for example, on your computer, or, you know, pages? So, you know, we don't want people to be using town equipment for basis or other inappropriate purposes. The question is, how do you monitor that and enforce it without creating additional problems for unintended consequences?
I know in some jobs that I've had, certain websites are blocked.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to go to Facebook at work, I can't go to Facebook on a company computer, because it's blocked away, and that avoids that issue. And then it just becomes people are on their own personal
That's different.
devices, and
Yeah.
that's a different animal, but that's the way you do it.
Well,
You
yeah, that's
block-
one way
you
to
block
do
the
it. I
social
mean,
media, right?
It's not, I mean, it's not necessarily the best way, or the appropriate way to work this time. So that's an issue that's just very require a little more thought than thinking.
And it's not just racism. If you want to catch people who are going to shoot up schools or commit suicide, if you can identify them, then you want to monitor their what to say on the computer. It's the best way to find out whether someone is suicidal or whether they're planning an attack.
So you have
civil rights are
Yeah.
colliding
People
with
do that for
security.
civil rights and privacy rights.
Still. Okay.
Okay. Are we good on that topic?
I think
we'll,
Yeah.
we will discuss it further, but we will raise it, within the next 6 months as to, we want to have the police chief come back, and certainly if there are other department heads such as the fire chief, you know, please feel free to raise the issue, we would really like to have come in and talk with us. So we want to, usually it's towards the end of the meeting that we talk about recent and upcoming events and meetings, and we're always getting rushed on that. So there is a lot going on, particularly this month, so I thought that I would put it on the agenda a little bit earlier, things that are going on. Do you want to start with that?
Our annual MLK, actually, you know, actually choose
Yeah,
this.
I'll talk about that.
You will talk about that? Good. We also have John Wilson sculpture unveiling will happen on January 27th. It will be at 3 o'clock over at Town Hall.
That's
it's
great.
Yes, it's already installed. It's in the shroud right now, so you can't see it. But,
Easily removed, sure.
That's right.
You can peek under the shirt.
Their whole thing will be around 20-25 minutes, and I do have a nice, I don't want to do any spoilers, but a really nice figure way to do the sculpture. So,
Great.
I don't have the dates in front of me, but we do, we are scheduled to have a job fair. We'll be attending a job fair, excuse me, on Eastman on February 12th, I believe. And then we'll have one at UMass Boston, which will happen in March. And again, we're inviting selected department heads to bring staff there to talk about career paths and actually job opportunities.
So we as the town.
Yes.
It's a recruiting effort.
It's a recruiting effort.
Is it a general job fair or is it particular diversity?
The one in UMass will be basically going to be for, it focuses on minority recruits. And the one in Northeastern is more general.
That is, that's something that Caitlin has taken on, that she found in the air training that departments weren't going out to diversity recruiting fairs and didn't have a presence out there, and has put together a list of different events and has talked to department heads who have been pretty positive in their response and willingness to go out and start doing some recruiting for the town. So,
Does that include the students as well?
I don't think so. I think it's
schools.
specifically around the town. Yeah.
Separate and.
I admit, that's just something I'm missing. It's up to individual schools, it's very little.
I know there is a GARE community group that is meeting on January 31st. I'm attending.
It's 7 p.m. Dan's house.
That's not the summer.
No, the summit, there is a summit to eliminate racism in Brookline.
February
That's
8th or something.
February
10th.
10th at 11:30. I don't have a location. Can you give a
We don't have a location yet.
Who's organizing that?
Group of town people.
Summit to eliminate racism.
What?
Summit to eliminate racism.
Yes.
And February 10th, you said?
Yes.
It's a Sunday.
If anyone gets more information on that location and time.
The time says 11:34. They don't have a location.
I'll have that information.
Okay, if you could distribute that, that'd be great. And Bernard, can you talk about the MLK event?
Sure. Our annual Martin Luther King Jr. celebration event is scheduled for Monday, January 21st at 3 p.m. at the usual place, which is Coolidge Corner Theater. It's going to be an exciting program. The sort of focus of the program is going to be a film prepared by Harvey Grobman, interviewing a number of people, Brookline residents, both black and white, reflecting on their experiences during the Civil Rights era, basically 50s and 60s. Their experiences largely in connection with housing integration. So I mean, I've seen, I've seen previews of the movie. It's an incredible documentary. It's starring people like Mark Gray and Bobby Nabel, who we all know as well as some other people. The program will include an entertainment piece, Testosterone from Brookline High School, Reggie Gibson, who everyone knows and loves, who's going to be doing a special performance that will include a soprano and a string trio doing original compositions, putting the words of Martin Luther King to music. And I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but it sounds really interesting. It's a 15-minute piece of a larger performance, and the entire performance is going to be put on at the Unitarian Church over on Walnut Street
When?
on Saturday.
This Saturday?
This Saturday, yeah. Pardon? Let me make sure. Bring my calendar such a long time. So, yes, Saturday. So the name of the performance is In His Own Words, and we're going to have a 15-minute piece of that for our program. Then the poet laureate, Zeb Schlesinger, is going to read a poem by Gwendolyn Brooks called Beverly Hills, Chicago. And that poem is trying to make a good segue to film, because I'm not going to tell you what the poem is about. You can go read it. It's a fascinating poem. And then we have the film. And then I'm going to be interviewing Patricia Wynn, who you know because she appeared for the commission a few months ago. For those of you who don't know, she's the editor of the Globe Spotlight team, and they did the series on race in Boston back in December of 2017. It was called Boston Racism, Image, Reality. So I'm going to be interviewing her with respect to the connection between what we see in the film from basically experiences of the 50s and 60s, and how we've evolved or not up to the present day. So it should be a very interesting discussion. She's a fascinating person. Lives here in Brookline, has for many years, and I think it'll be a very informative as well as entertaining discussion. So that's Monday, the 21st, 3 p.m. Hope you all come. You do have to get tickets through.
I'd like to add into that, there are no more tickets left.
Okay. Is there a way that people?
And usually you just show up, and if people don't show up, then you can have their seats.
Wear your warm clothes.
Didn't I see on the town meeting listserv that they're going to show the film or show part of the program over at KI as part of that expo thing?
Yeah, I wanted
that
to
they were
talk
gonna-
about that.
I saw something, I think about
I didn't
That was
see that,
okay.
but, yeah, that's just to say that from 12 to 3, there's going to be this Inspo Expo on that same day, on MLK Day. And there will be, I think, 70 different town groups there with tables. There will also be, this is near and dear to my heart because I did this for 3 years, a food collection for the food pantry there. So get your stuff there before 2:30 because it has to go over to the food pantry itself. There will also be,
That's at KI?
that's also at KI, yeah.
Okay.
From 12 to 2:30. There will also be the usual collection of books, CDs, DVDs, video games, that sort of thing, at the Booksmith. If you have a truckload of books, that's fine. The police will be there helping to unload things. Students will be unloading, police will be allowing you to pull up there so you can unload the stuff, and will be taken down by high school students.
And what kind of food? Is there some?
Well, not
Chinese?
perishable.
So any canned, box, whatever?
Yeah,
Exactly.
canned or boxed.
Or dried
And,
goods.
and a list came out of what they need. They said tuna. We have so much tuna. I just worked at the food pantry, not this Saturday, the one before. They always have plenty of tuna, but, they need things like personal care items too.
Oh.
We recently got a whole bunch of tampons and pads. Sometimes there are baby diapers and baby food. There's not
Okay.
that much call for that. There's dog food occasionally, cat food. But mostly it's people food, and it's toothpaste and toothbrushes,
Okay, great.
shampoo, conditioner, whatever.
Good.
Shaving things.
I got it.
Make sure they're not expired though.
Oh, absolutely.
That's-
Yeah, they'll take anything that has an expiration date that's less than a year old.
Yeah.
So if it
Less than
expired.
what?
A year,
old.
a year. On the other hand, don't clean out your pantry for stuff that's been sitting there for years.
Right.
Truth of the matter is most canned stuff is fine as long as the lid isn't popped out, but, they can be about what they accept. So. And that's only, and so a year is too much because by the time it gets there, it's only good for a year past expiration.
Any other events that we should know about? And reports from liaisons, Lloyd, anything? Update the group on?
I think everyone around the table pretty much up to speed. We're working with the GARE groups, and we had a couple meetings. I have a couple meetings right now. We're actually coming up with several different goals that the town-wide goals that we have. We're looking forward to actually with Joan's group and the racial summit. My understanding is they're going to come up with some priority areas for that they would like the town to work on. I'm looking forward to getting those.
Is that bringing together like all the groups
Yes.
that are, okay, so it's that list that you talked about a little time ago. Terrific.
Time to get together.
And we're still in the throes with getting the agenda.
Yes, actually, the first, I am on the screening, and so is Lloyd.
Right.
Screening committee for the HR director for the town. So we've had one initial meeting, and the first meeting to see any results of the recruitment is tomorrow.
Right.
Suzanne, any update?
There's lots going on, but I'm not sure if this is permission. Just for the renaming of the Coolidge Corner School, we have until next week, I think the 23rd. To submit names. We have over 100 so far. And the group students meeting with administration have a meeting regularly to form a team, understand what the work is, understand the importance of the work, why it happens, why the renaming. Yeah, so so stay tuned for the next, there'll be some forums for the public coming down the road.
Thank you. Vishnu?
I haven't been here in a while, but end of October, the MSN conference, the Student Achievement Network, that went really well. A lot of people from the town and the school department came and sat in different parts of the conference, which is really nice. And tomorrow we're presenting to the school committee about our action plan on closing the disciplinary gap at our school. And so this year we got a detention tracking system in place. So basically now teachers have to report race and gender, and there's more data that we'll have for the future. So that's just getting started. And we're working on having implicit bias training for teachers. There's going to be a day later in the year to go more about doing racial justice framing with how you do punishments and making it more of a inclusive thing to do, and so students have more of a say in how they when punishments occur. So more of a restorative justice approach. So we're presenting that tomorrow, and then working on teacher trainings for the future.
You're presenting to school committee,
Yeah.
did you say? Okay, so that's tomorrow evening?
Yeah.
It is the restorative justice program part of what you're talking about?
We're working with them, but we're focusing it with the data tracking that we have, and then using their skills to sort of align together.
Michael, any?
I'm beginning to do this.
Okay. And Bernard?
No.
Anything from, no, nothing new with the select board?
Nothing new and interesting.
Julia. So I'd just like to say that the Indigenous Peoples Day Committee is finally being formed. Vishni and I are part of it, along with one of our other co-petitioners, Raquel Halsey. We have 5 slots, so if anyone knows anyone who would like to be involved in that, please let me know so I can get it rolling. So we're not another year without an Indigenous Peoples Day celebration. So just send it to me.
Do you want to say something about the housing?
But that comes later.
Oh, okay.
So there are 5 additional slots?
No, 5 total.
5 total. So you're
But
looking for 2
I'm
more?
and those 2 that are members of the committee need to be town residents. However, I would love to have people who are very interested in this, or they don't necessarily need to be town residents, they can participate
Okay.
in the
Not
committee at
necessarily.
all.
We just on the committee or everything.
Yeah, they were, yeah, I mean, they won't be official members of the committee. This is how the charge got written.
And I did hear from Sean, and he sent his apologies that he is not able to make it this evening. And the employment committee, we haven't met since our last meeting. We're meeting next Tuesday, so I will hold off on any report from there. So I'll turn it over to Sandy.
Okay. The first item we had in our agenda for a while was the video on housing discrimination, which has been done. I guess they got their funding from the community fund.
Well, you were talking about two different videos. Fair
Oh,
housing-
I thought you
fair-
said it was the same.
No, it's the same person doing it.
Okay.
We'll actually start shooting for the video tomorrow.
All right.
So,
But you gave me an impressive list of people, which duplicate some of the names I've heard, that will be talking about housing discrimination.
Yes, we'll probably use some of that footage, but there's going to be a lot of fresh faces, at least 3 fresh faces.
Yeah. But I'm very pleased that this is coming up to the MLK thing, because we struggled over the years on how to get the general public aware of housing discrimination issues and what to do about it. It's hard to get the word out. We have meetings and a handful of town employees show up and training sessions, and so the video should work too, and then we have to figure out where to use it. But this is a very good start. I'm happy that's happening. The other thing in our next meeting, which is January 28th, we will have a discussion with Andre LaRue, Executive Director of the Massachusetts Smart Growth Alliance, who is an expert in affordable housing and someone who Joan has brought to us. And she and I had a conversation with him, and he's very easy to talk to, very expert. Had some ideas of things we haven't thought of. It may be crazy, but for example, building affordable housing on existing sites. I drive by the High Street development, and there's a big parking lot, outdoor parking lot with the town. Consider building another building on that with underground parking, using town-owned property for more affordable housing. And there are other things that we'll discuss with him. Our focus has been on, I think I mentioned in the last meeting, the waiver fee that developers can pay in order to get out of affordable housing requirements if their building is 6 to 15 units. Less than 6, there's no requirement. Over 15, you have to have affordable housing. So we're seeing what other towns, Bob has been looking into this, what other towns do. And we have a project in Brookline that just computed the waiver fee, and we'll see how those facts run under formulas in other towns and give us a handle. But this is not our bailiwick, it's the Housing Advisory Board, and I've got to talk to Roger Blood, the chair of that, to come to our next meeting so that we don't duplicate efforts. He's hiring a consultant to work with this waiver fee thing, because it obviously involves some complicated business and financial questions for developers. And he can gather more information than we can. I think that was it. Was there anything else?
No.
You guys want? All right.
Summary, yeah, and 28th is next week, like you said.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Sandy?
Sure.
I've been thinking about, I know nothing about housing, I just want to preface things by saying that, except I live in a house. I always do. Lucky,
We're all
lucky to enjoy it, or an apartment or something. But, you know what, I'm struck with how we segregate people who need affordable housing and this reminded me because you brought up using that parking lot. Our housing needs to be mixed income housing. We can't continue to have housing projects, we used to call them.
I agree.
What I'm thinking is-
No, this was just one thing I hadn't thought of before, and not necessarily.
I mean, that's the idea behind 40B, I guess, but the percent should be higher. You know, if we build something, it should be 50/50 or whatever, it seems
But
appropriate.
40B works, and in the other, in the town rule, if you're over 15 units, you have to have affordable housing, and it has to be integrated.
Regardless of whether it's 40B or not?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's the town rule.
You can't-
inclusionary zoning.
Because of the, okay, yeah, okay.
But that's definitely one of the things that we've been talking about, and that's why we're so concerned and interested in looking at the speed that developers can pay to
Yeah, right.
essentially get out from creating an affordable unit in an otherwise non-affordable building.
For 40B gets you out of other zoning.
The zoning, right,
So you
yeah,
can
right.
come in as a neighbor, so to speak.
Thank you.
So on the housing project issue that you raised right there, why doesn't the commission ask the director of the housing authority to come talk to her?
Would be a good idea.
Yeah.
About those issues? I mean,
Mhm.
again, he's focused on low-income affordable housing. But, and this is outside of his jurisdiction, but I think that maybe you can have a conversation of middle-income housing, which is where you get at the integration, racial integration issue.
The requirements that I've seen do reach middle income housing. 100% of the average for the metropolitan district of income people do get into. That's considered affordable housing, and the variations.
The housing authority.
Yeah, but we definitely want to talk to David Guzman from the development office, attends all of our meetings, so we have expertise coming that way, but we need to do the political part and start coordinating with the housing authority or the housing advisory board. Yeah.
Sorry, just back on the Employment Diversity Committee. We do have, in our meeting next Tuesday, we will have Sarah Slyman from the Library Department coming in to meet with us. And we do have updated statistics from the town, so I haven't actually taken a look at those and haven't sliced and diced them, but I will do that next Tuesday. So we'll have more information to share with the committee then. And then in our March meeting, where we will be meeting with Lisa Richardson from the school department and getting an update. She did send me the presentation that had been given to the school committee. I have had that open on my computer for about 4 days and maybe longer than that, and haven't had a chance to look at it. So I will do that, and once I do, I'll send it on to the other members of the committee. So we are ahead of schedule, surprisingly. So I do appreciate that Larry is here early. Larry, do you mind?
Sure. Good.
You're up on the agenda. You had asked for 15 minutes on our agenda, so
Right.
we are.
So the plan is 15 minutes and then 10 minutes of Q&A. Would I be allowed to yield any of my time during the 15 minutes to any citizens that are here that want to talk about the culture of bowling?
If you want to do that, yes, but I can give you 15 minutes. We can take 10 minutes, and then we will have some time for public comment after that, so.
So there will be time for, I don't know everybody in the group here, so if you could introduce yourself.
Larry, can you speak up?
Yeah, I don't know everybody in the group here.
Sure.
And so some folks are strangers, so if you can tell me who I'm talking with, I'd appreciate it.
I'm Vishni Samarvira. I'm a senior at VHS, and I'm the student representative. Yeah.
Suzanne's a celebrity.
So I'm Jessica Kiko. I'm a Brookline resident and a commissioner.
Gentlemen, report.
Dave Vanderseel.
Sandy Master.
You don't know me? Wow, it's been 30 years and you don't know me. 30 years. I'm insulted. Michael Groveman, Brookline Police. 30 years. Mark knows me.
That's a sensitive subject. Because I have walked with Mark on the streets. He has coached me that I better modulate my voice because he might get targeted.
Not from me.
Ryan, could
I
you
might
speak
hug
up?
him.
You need to speak up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, yeah. Could you speak up?
Oh,
Yeah, thanks.
So, I appreciate the opportunity to have some time to talk about this culture of bullying. And so that we have a common language when I'm talking about the culture of bullying. I'm looking at it at the systemic level, the organizational level. I'm not talking about schoolyard bullying. I'm talking about bullying that goes on when citizens decide to assert themselves or challenge certain policies, procedures. And what I want to do is have it here. So if you can share this, this is, I don't think I have enough for everybody, but this is the town's organizational chart. Okay? So we have this situation. One of the challenges is that, are we all in agreement that citizens are at the top of the hierarchy of the town's organization? I'm sorry, I got more. Oh, yeah.
Just give us a bunch
We'll
of
share it.
This chart was produced by the town government. This is the official chart. So on this chart, citizens, the way I read this, are at the top of the chart, top of the hierarchy. Now, when I'm talking about the culture of bullying in town government, what I'm talking about is the following. There is this serious imbalance of power, and this imbalance of power involves threats, intimidation, harassment, attacks that are often repetitive. And they're designed to secure domination and control and create fear, harm, or submission. And I just want to say that that definition comes from this book, which I highly recommend everybody read. And the author happens to be on the faculty of Mark Ray's BC. So the other piece of this is that almost all the time when the bullying goes on, it's justified for the good of the other situation, the other person. Okay? Now, I can talk and identify a number of critical incidents that have happened with citizens in Brookline. And I'm willing to name names and talk about specific incidents if people are curious about that. I will say, I'll give you a flavor of a couple of the incidents, okay? One is that those of us who were deeply concerned about systemic race issues in Brookline regarding some town employees received subpoenas from the town council's office. And I just want to say that one of the things that I would like to put on the table is my belief is that these lawsuits that have happened could have completely been prevented if the Board of Selectmen were willing at the time to engage in some uncomfortable, courageous conversation with citizens and the employees involved who were not interested in taking legal action. So we have a situation where there's little or no prevention, and then it often results in a lawsuit. Okay? Now, I received 2 subpoenas from the town council. The first subpoena was, and it was related to the issue of Gerald Alston, the firefighter. And the first subpoena I received wanted all kinds of documents from me, which the town had, okay. And I told the town that it has those documents. However, the federal judge, the magistrate, ruled that the town was out of bounds in subpoenaing non-parties to the lawsuit. Second subpoena I received was there was an attempt to prevent me from talking with 5 citizens in Brookline. 5 citizens. And I was not allowed to talk with these 5 citizens until after my deposition. The town decided to depose me. I have the deposition, and all I can say is, what a waste of taxpayers' money, time, the legal department, a very, very sad situation. But there's a systemic pattern here. The federal magistrate judge ruled that it was out of bounds and inappropriate to prevent me from talking with 5 citizens in the town before my deposition. I don't know whether some of you are aware of this, but if one serves on a commission as a volunteer, that a workplace complaint can be filed against them. Are you all aware of that? That a workplace complaint can be filed against a volunteer who serves on like this commission or any commission. Is people aware of that?
What's the point?
What?
What's the point?
The point is that that was a classic case of systemic bullying, trying to intimidate, harass, okay. And then and the workplace complaint was filed against me. And I'm away in the woods, and I get a phone call from the town council that a workplace complaint was filed against me because of my participation in the then Human Relations Commission. And I explained to Jocelyn that the complaint was not accurate. She told me she's going to do an investigation, okay? And when I came back later, I asked her about the results. And she told me, this is the town councilman, she told me, oh, there's no report. Recently, I filed a public records request and it turns out that there was a report. So there is this pattern of when a citizen starts dealing with the issue of race in this town, that intimidation, harassment, retaliation is going to take place. And I think that it's important for people to understand. When I received my subpoenas, there were residents of the town said to me, well, you better hire a lawyer. You better hire a lawyer. So this creates a chilling effect on citizens. Now, we're all aware there have been bullying incidents at town meeting. There have been bullying incidents at the advisory committee. There have been bullying incidents at Board of Selectmen meeting. And the thing to understand is that nice people can engage in systemic organizational bullying. So I'm here today because I would like, would like to have some dialogue and questions about anything I have, anything I have said today. And I have some suggestions that maybe could prevent some of this organizational bullying. I'm prepared to share those. But up right now, are there any questions or?
Can I get some clarification? You were served a subpoena and investigated for stuff with Human Services, which would have been at least 5 years ago. Like, I'm trying to get a time frame. Like when you say you were subpoenaed for
the time frame?
Yeah, so I'm trying to get a time frame. Like, are they investigating you for things that happened like 5 years ago now?
Yes.
Okay. But no, I'm just trying to get a time frame.
No, absolutely.
You said there's a workplace, I forgot the word you used. Complaint. What was the workplace complaint?
What the workplace complaint was that I had a meeting with Nancy Daly, Arthur Conquest, and Betsy DeWitt discussing the appointment of Arthur Conquest to the Human Relations Commission. And at the end of the meeting, Nancy Daly made these this was when she was a select person, these outrageous statements about me.
In the meeting?
In the meeting,
Okay.
with Betsy DeWitt and Arthur Conquest, at the very end of the meeting, okay? And then, shortly afterward, the acting chair of the Human Relations Commission filed a workplace complaint against me.
Because of what she had said about you?
My hunch is that this person who filed the workplace complaint inevitably was based upon Nancy Daly.
Yeah, what she had said about you.
Yeah.
Because that person wasn't there at that meeting.
Excuse me.
The person wasn't there at the meeting, is that
Exactly.
correct?
Exactly.
based on hearsay.
And the.
And I was told there was a voicemail that I left on the acting chairperson's telephone. A voicemail. So anyway, the town council's office has been part, the impact, okay, it's maybe not the intent, but the impact is, this creates a culture of intimidation, bullying, and it's really, really sad. Really sad.
Okay. Are there any other questions there?
Can I just say, over the statement that the commission made in January of, I've forgotten how many years ago, was it 2016 or something like that? We all got, we had to, send, commissioners from this commission had to send their records of any deliberation about that. They also wanted to know who we had discussed it with. Or if we had any, no, it was even more broad, any discussions or emails we had with certain people who were involved in it. I can tell you who it is. We know who they are. And you had, it was a multiple page thing. I sent them 60 pages of stuff, which was all in the record. I don't communicate with the people they asked about anyway by email, but whatever, regardless. I don't communicate with them frankly most of the time. But anyway, that feels intimidating. If you're faced with an onslaught of something like that, and you have to produce all these pages of stuff, but most of which is just the minutes to the meetings that are already available online. We weren't always really good about okaying them, so they were not always there. But yeah. If you've ever been sued by anything, I'm a doctor, I've been sued for malpractice, that's intimidating to do that, to have that sort of thing happen to you. And it's unnecessary. Over a statement that we made at a meeting in support of other town residents. I'm still angry about it, obviously, you can tell. And then, afterwards, we were asked to retract our statement because it was being used in lawsuits, which we then modified. I feel, frankly, sorry that I did. And I will always feel sorry that I voted for retraction. My one vote wouldn't have made that much difference, but nevertheless, I feel like I didn't stand up for who I should be standing up for in this town.
That's good. I guess, maybe Bernard or Floyd. Who has oversight and evaluation of the legal counsel?
Town council,
Yeah.
select board.
I'm sorry? So
Well,
select board is
no,
oversight?
the town administrator and the select board through the town administrator.
So you evaluate and have oversight of their work? I'm just trying to be clear.
The town administrator is direct oversight of town department.
Are they, and does that mean he evaluates their job performance as well?
Larry, was there what sort of justification was provided to you upon receiving these subpoenas? And when you questioned the subpoenas, what sort of response came back from town council?
Right, so the federal
And by the way,
magistrate.
subpoenas are issued in the context of a lawsuit, right? Okay, and what was the lawsuit?
The lawsuit is regarding Gerald Alston of the town of Brookline.
Are you a party to that lawsuit?
No. No. And in fact, no, I'm not a party to it, and that's one of the reasons why the federal magistrate judge ruled that it was out of bounds, or that it was inappropriate for that subpoena to be issued, because I'm a non-party to this. But I was in the courthouse.
So on what basis was,
Oh.
what was it?
Well, a person of interest.
Non-parties can be subpoenaed, and it's not that's not
Can't
the
hear
issue.
you.
Non-parties can be subpoenaed, it's not the issue. The
It was
issue-
for the judge.
Well, it was to the judge, but to say that they shouldn't have issued a subpoena is a different issue,
What?
a different matter.
May I speak, please?
No,
I'll be
I'm
very
sorry,
brief.
we're not, it's
Okay.
not time for
And
public
I'm not
comment.
gonna get into a discussion of this.
I wasn't speaking to you.
Well,
I wasn't speaking to you either.
Really, all I can say is this, is that I was in the courtroom and I heard the judge tell Patty Correa to sit down and meet with the non-parties that they were subpoenaed. They were subpoenaed. Sit down and meet. Never happened. Never happened.
Larry, you were a member of the predecessor commission, the Human
Yes.
Rights Commission.
Yes.
But I remember that, I was too, and a member of this commission, there was a document request. And they wanted everything, and it was a pain in the neck. But I gathered up what I could that related to the Alstons who visited Jocelyn, and we went through everything, and she copied what she didn't have and said, "I already got that."
Well, I can tell you, it's kind of interesting, Sandy, you raise that issue, because I showed the subpoena, the first subpoena I received, to a town resident who works in the U.S. Attorney's Office, okay? And he looked at this, and he basically said to me, Larry, you know, this is like subpoena documents from a pharmaceutical company. It was stunning. Now, back to the second point. Patty Correa would not talk with me and meet with me when the judge suggested, I don't know the legal language, that she should sit down and meet. However, she engaged in conversations with Michael Sandman about the issue. So this is another example of this culture of bullying, this imbalance in power, okay? Here I am, a citizen. The judge suggested we sit down and meet. She won't meet with me. And she's having conversations with Michael Sandman. Now, probably why she did that is that Michael Sandman was in my precinct, and I have great respect for him. And I raised this issue with the town meeting members in my precinct about that subpoena. So this imbalance of power, and back to this organizational chart, as a citizen, we're at the top of the chart. And most citizens, or many, feel they're second-class people.
But my point is, you were probably subpoenaed because you were, as you first pointed out when you started your presentation, volunteers who work on commissions consider town employees. For this purpose, we can get subpoenaed. I guess we can get sued because we're exercising a town function even though we're volunteers. So
I obviously, but the judge ruled that it was inappropriate.
Well, maybe
The federal magistrate judge ruled that it was inappropriate.
Yeah, I don't know without seeing it exactly what he was focusing on. I imagine the subpoenas were appropriate, but maybe they were asking for the wrong things.
Are there other questions? I will open it up to public comment, but I will limit people to 2 minutes per person. And if you can just identify yourself. Thank you to speak.
I'm Savian Cohen. I'm not a member of any organization. I've never sat on a committee. I've never been a member of a commission. And I received a subpoena from town council that was off the hook. They wanted 6 years of my private emails. And they wanted any correspondence with, and I quote, anyone black in the police and the fire department. It went on and on and on. So, like Larry, It was thrown out of court. The judge said that it was overbroad and that I wasn't a party to anything, that there was no reason and I shouldn't have been subpoenaed. But I want to say that I consider that retaliatory, and I think that the purpose of it was to chill and to tamp down people who speak up about issues that are important to them. And as a resident, it's really creepy, frankly, to know that your own town government has decided to let this happen, because the advisory committee knew, people knew that this happened, and no one reached out to us, and I was never on a commission or a committee. There's no reason and there's no excuse. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
I just happened
You know
to,
who you are, but who are you?
Arthur Conquest. I just happened to attend a hearing that Gerald Alston had in the Moakley Courthouse. And while sitting there, the judge mentions my name as someone that could not talk to Larioni. And I asked the judge if I could ask why, and she said no. She said I could talk to Patty Correa or I could talk to Brooks Ames. So I talked to Patty Correa while I was there, and she said that she would send me this document the following day that was an official court document that said I could not talk to Larioni based on 2 meetings that I supposedly was present at, when in fact I wasn't present at one of the meetings and the second meeting never took place. And I've been jousting with Patty Correa since then to find out why she said that I couldn't talk to Larioni, and she can't give me a reason. It's just crazy. Just out of the blue, she pulled us out of the thin air.
Any other comments? Yes?
I'm Mike Sandin, and one of my colleagues, two of my colleagues on the advisory committee here, and one of them just said to me, 3, is there another?
Sean.
Sean. Oh, great, great.
Bessie just walked in.
So, I don't think that, to the best of our recollection, that the advisory committee was actually aware of the subpoenas until, in my case, Larry called me up and said, this is what's going on, would I talk to Patty Correa and see what was happening? But I will say, I do think, as I listen to this entire tale, I do think that there is a tendency to use a subpoena as a hammer by making it very broad. And that is, as a practical matter for a citizen, typical citizen, it's very difficult to, and very disturbing, to try to comply with all of the requests that might be made under the law. So there needs to be some sense of balance on the part of town council when these kinds of things are put together.
Any other comments?
I think I have a question. I guess, Larry, I'm actually curious what town council's role was in asking you anything. Like, and I don't mean that to be facetious, I really don't. Like, when Kaya talks about it, and town council asked me for information about things, I had to remind them that I was a town employee with a town computer and a town email, and they could look themselves. Because I signed over that right anyway. But I also was unclear why they were asking me. Like, I was unclear what brought them into the equation. And so I'm curious, for your instance, what actually brought them into the equation? Like what was town council doing? Like I was curious in our instance, what they were actually looking for, but not just looking for, like what was their role? Like what were they gonna do with it? Like town council is not, they're not the FBI. They're not an investigatory or a law enforcement agency. And so I'm just curious. I mean, I know others in the public kind of have spoken to their circumstances, but also, I'm afraid to sort of ask everybody. So, I mean, that could be 20 different answers. So,
I would say that the impact on me was that this was another experience of this culture of bullying, this systemic culture of bullying, and that it would have a chilling effect, not on me, but on other citizens. And it did, because I had conversations with other citizens, and some said, I don't want to get involved in this, and others said I ought to get a lawyer or lawyers. So that's my response.
I don't remember, but is it possible that what Jocelyn did was the result of a subpoena or request, I don't remember the legal term for it, made by Alston's lawyers? Yeah. That they wanted information?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting. Because actually, Malcolm is getting me thinking about something. Because I was never on the witness list. And this was the myth that was being spread as part of this culture. I was never on the witness list.
No, or any of us.
Regarding the Alston case. Never on the witness list.
Yeah. But I think the counsel for Alston may have had a purpose in asking Jocelyn to uncover or to gather up all the information she could related to the Alston case or discrimination in the police department. They wanted that on the table so they could use it.
Look, I just want to say one thing, Sandy. I want to say one thing, okay? As a taxpayer who pays a large amount of taxes and has been a citizen in this town since 1974, that I can see that if we were in the prevention business and we also saw this as a public health issue and we looked at it from a systemic point of view, there would not have to spend, the town council's office would not have to spend the time needed. I had conversations with some selectmen privately, and it was clear to me that they didn't have the skills or competency or the interest or the will to have a conversation about the systemic race issue. And we see this with like a Donald Trump, who is the perpetrator, but then he pretends he's the victim. He's the victim, okay? And that dynamic is playing on in this town. The town is very concerned about its reputation, Sam, okay? And we're exceptional here in Brookline. And unfortunately, whenever asked to be exceptional, then it becomes a la carte. Well, why don't you see what Watertown is doing, or Cambridge? I just want to get into two or three things that constructive that can be done. One proposal I have is that the town administrator be willing to spend 1 hour a month to meet with citizens. 1 hour a month. So that any citizen on this chart can come in and talk with the town administrator. There's a belief that the only way to get a response from the town administrator on certain sensitive issues is you have to CC a lawyer. Otherwise, it's gonna go down a black hole. Second thing, the advisory committee should have an application process for people who are interested in serving on the advisory committee. And something should be put in the tab that there are these openings on the advisory committee, and here are the skills that are needed, and fill out an application. Third thing.
What, you said you had two.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Two more.
Can I just ask,
okay, two
can I
more.
ask a
One
follow-up?
is-
Maybe I can ask Michael as
Sorry?
to, what is the process for applying to the, how are people selected for the advisory
The advisory
committee?
committee is appointed by the town moderator, and it's required that there be one representative from each precinct who is a town meeting member. Other members are appointed at large based on the moderator's assessment of the kinds of skills and knowledge that the committee could use. The advisory committee, the function of the advisory committee is the finance committee. That's its primary function. And so a great many of the members have one type of expertise or another that would be useful in town policy.
I'll just add, most of the time, the moderator is having to appoint someone from a particular precinct. So advertising in the tab might not serve that purpose because the moderator is choosing from the town meeting members, of which there are 15.
Sure.
And it's got to be one of those members, and many of them will decline, so it's a limited pool.
Sure.
For the at-large members, obviously you can draw from a broader pool.
Is there a limit on the at-large members?
Yes.
But Sean, one thing, okay, I'm aware.
Sorry, can we stop?
Well, I just
saying
wanna-
We are having public comment
Oh, okay.
now, so can you identify yourself?
Sean Lynn Jones, Chair,
Thank
Advisory
you.
Committee.
Can I just respond to what Mr. Chapman was saying, is that Finance Committee, obviously the Advisory Committee is certainly the Finance Committee, but it has become something much greater than that too. Is that fair to say that the Advisory Committee offers its ideas and opinions and beliefs and votes on many, many issues above and beyond just basic finance for the town? Isn't that a fair statement?
Well, that's true, and by law,
Yeah.
not just
Yeah, so
by
I just
custom.
wanted to clarify that it's not just the Finance Committee, it's a much broader charge, or it's become a much broader charge over time.
Right, although I will say that the Finance Committee makes recommendations almost exclusively on financial issues. That is, it's on its own initiative. It comments, it makes recommendations at town meeting on all warrant articles, typically from the perspective of, well, what's the cost of the article, what's the impact from the financial perspective. But on its own initiative, it actually focuses very much on financial.
Yes?
Hi, I'm Jen Goldsmith, just visiting. I'm a town meeting member of Precinct 11. And this is the first time I've been to this committee, so this conversation, I'm not sure if this leads to recommendations that lead to action. Inadvertently, I became sort of the recipient of, just to use the word in the book, some bullying from our moderator during the course of the last town meeting. And as a result of that, it was really inadvertent. Like, I'm not a shrinking violet, I wasn't sort of wounded, but it was pretty weird to be directly insulted in front of the entire town meeting. And what came up, what sort of percolated in the aftermath of that was a lot of people who felt like over a long period of time there were some patterns of really unsupportive behavior on the part of the moderator. I think there's plenty to be said about that, but it does make me think about having had the chance to sit on advisory for a couple of months when there was a vacancy in my precinct, which I couldn't have more respect for the dedication of the people there sitting around me. But it also strikes me how arbitrary it is that the moderator has such a fiat in selecting the members. Like within a precinct, I get that it's within the panel of town meeting members. The at-large is much more arbitrary, and we put a lot more effort and process into selecting people for committees like this or the Women's Commission that I sit on, versus like one individual who's elected with a moderator role to suddenly have, just a lot of autocracy in deciding who's on the group that has, outsized, not outsized because you're not qualified, but proportionally a lot of influence on town meeting. And when you're new to town meeting, we don't do a terrific job of introducing kind of who's doing what there. Like when I began on town meeting 5 or 6 years ago, I made assumptions that were sort of equal weight to the selectmen and to the advisory because of how the materials each session are presented. And it really never occurred to me how advisory was comprised, that it was much more the point of view of the moderator than the elections that we have selectmen or the thorough process of vetting for appointments to committees and commissions. So that lack of transparency and then that kind of autonomy in doing that just doesn't sit right to me, particularly in the aftermath of the kind of the sort of the range of things that I heard from a lot of people about a sense that Mr. Gatsby, well dedicated to his role, doesn't always demonstrate respect for people from town in a way that no one is deserving of, let's just call it his gruffness, but also his lack of transparency and his lack of clarity. And so if there's any kind of recommendations that come out of this committee, it would be, from my perspective, both establishing some standards for decorum on the part of the person who's supposed to be leading town meeting, but also maybe having a more democratic process even in thinking without advisory. And maybe there are bylaws that suggest that's not possible, but it's a lot of power in the hands of one person who, while he's been elected for many years without contested elections, also doesn't necessarily work well for a lot of people in town. Just we haven't been given an alternative and he hasn't been called to task. And at the Town Meeting Member Association, when we debriefed on that town meeting, it was super clear that he wants to put his interaction with me behind him. Fair, like if I were him, I'd want to also. He let us know it was the worst night of town meeting of all his many years. That's, sad for him. But it was, I'll say it was like a worse night for me. It was a worse night for Nick McClellan to be, embarrassed and shamed in front of a couple hundred people. But it was also clear that he wasn't really thinking about how can he improve things systemically or what he could do to, and this with real relevance to this committee, how can we even expect people to want to be part of our town government if the price of joining is hazing? And we know that the composition of our town meeting is disproportionately older than the average in town, disproportionately whiter, disproportionately less Asian. It's not representative of town. It's pretty hard to convince people to want to be there if that's the experience that you have there. And in the Town Meeting Member Association meeting, which a bunch of folks here were at, it truly felt to me like there were a diversity of voices speaking, different age people, different gender, different race. He didn't hear it from anyone. And it makes it really hard to understand why people would want to be part of our democratic town process if we can't think about how to improve that process for everyone.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Who would sanction the town moderator?
Voters.
Inappropriate. I'm sorry?
The voters.
Nobody runs.
That's
That's
my problem.
If you want to represent me in my divorce, then I can run for a moderator.
There have been complaints, that I know there were some things that you had observed, and we suggested that they.
Well, that was with respect to the moderator.
No.
No, it was something,
No.
it was
other
in town
meeting
government, it
members.
had to do with the reception of the Indigenous Peoples Day Committee, people at certain meetings of advisory and.
Well, but there've been email stuff about what she just talked about, that just makes the hair on your arm stand up. I mean, I think it's exactly what you said. Why would anybody want to subject themselves to behavior like that?
Well, nobody should have to subject themselves.
Well, right,
to
but
what needs to happen is the system needs to be changed, and there needs to be a message loud and clear from people in town, people on advisory, people who are part of
Town meeting members.
We need to do a better job at making sure that that type of behavior cannot be tolerated and will not be tolerated.
Can I just make a comment? You know, I believe that has been thought of over the years since I've been on advisory. We have, in fact, expanded the number of people that could sit on advisory, just I think to make that point, to allow more people with expertise or skills to come onto the committee beyond the one person per precinct. And so I think that's a modest effort to try to get to what
Expand voices.
Yes, so it's been expanded to 30, which is when I started it was maybe 26 maybe, or I mean there was an acknowledgement that we needed to broaden it to bring in more people with other expertise. So that has happened.
What did that do?
Can I just say one other thing? Probably more than anybody else in this room, my presentations in front of town meeting have been either halted or questioned 5 times. No one has said one single word. Okay? And I just had a meeting with the moderator as a result of Jennifer's session or speaking up at the Town Meeting Members Association, and I had a meeting with the moderator a couple of days ago. I think it might have been a week ago. And it really comes down to race. It comes down to him feeling uncomfortable about people addressing the issue of racism in Brookline. Okay, and he is uncomfortable and doesn't want to hear it. And I made it very clear to him that he's trampling on my constitutional rights. Okay, if we can't address what we think is important or relevant to the issues at town meeting, then what kind of government do we have? And how can he, as an individual, decide what I can say and what I can't say and how long I can say it? No one has said a word in 20 years.
Go ahead.
So I'm just sort of thinking that there are a couple of silos of activity. I mean, there's one about how do we not tolerate uncivil behavior in town meeting. If there's, if someone is insulted by the moderator, what does it take to empower someone else to stand and say, page 20 of the town meeting moderator's guide says, you need to be supportive of people who are asking questions, even if the questions seem really dumb. That's an easy thing. It's interesting to question whether there could be more transparency about appointments to advisory. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but what are the criteria? Does he have some rubric he's using when he's deciding, or is it fiat? And why is it so much less structured than any of the other styles of appointment in town? It just seems kind of strange. And then in the same spirit that he has the autonomy to create what is called moderator committees when there's a complicated issue, it seems like maybe there's room for a moderator committee on what it means to have the most expansive representation in our government possible. That's not in response to a specific warrant, but it is in response to the study that we have of who's representing our, is our town government representative of our town, and how can we do more to make it possible? And I don't know if that happens as a moderator's meeting, but that would go a long way to his demonstrating that it matters to him that the town meeting not look more like him than like the town. So, those are 3 very distinct things. Again, I don't know structurally how this committee feeds into that, but I don't just sort of want to complain that he hurt my feelings. I don't think that's very useful. I think it's sort of, clarified that there are a series and a long history of people feeling like we've elected someone who isn't really hearing and respecting how, as elected people or as citizens, we feel like we should be treated.
Okay. Well, thank everyone for their comments. That's good. I would ask if people are interested in bringing up this topic at the next, February meeting. to email me individually. Due to open meeting laws, please don't circulate emails that you want to feed into me. And comments. Okay. Anything else before we adjourn?
So I just want to say thank you to Larry for bringing this forward.
I appreciate having the opportunity to make the presentation.
This is something that, you know, it's bizarre to me that we don't seem to have any checks and balances besides voting. Besides voting. That's bizarre to me. Especially when I know we've added governance. Like we're not following the bylaws of 1705.
Right.
We've added government. We've added it without any checks and balances. That's bizarre to me.
And while
Well, I think it speaks exactly to what Larry's talking about. If you create a power structure with no checks and balances within it, you can vote. Because there's nobody to check. Not within the system.
And there's no one to hear people that aren't connected in the way that you guys are to commissions and committees. So if it can happen among you as you govern, think about how it can happen for those of us who have even less power.
Okay. Can you get a motion to adjourn?
So.
Second? Second. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.